Marcus Thompson sat in the back row of the military transport truck, watching the other recruits talk and laugh. At 19 years old, he looked younger than most of them. His thin frame was lost in the oversized army uniform, and his thick glasses kept sliding down his nose. While the other soldiers shared stories about their hometowns and why they joined the army, Marcus stayed quiet. Nobody expected much from the skinny kid from Tennessee. During roll call at Fort Benning, Drill Sergeant Williams had to call his name twice because Marcus answered so softly. The other recruits started calling him Mouse after the first week. He never complained about the nickname. He just accepted it like he accepted everything else. Basic training was hard for everyone, but it seemed extra difficult for Marcus. He struggled with the physical exercises. During long runs, he always finished near the back of the group. When they did push-ups and pull-ups, he could barely keep up with the minimum requirements. The drill sergeants yelled at him constantly, but he never yelled back or made excuses. He just tried harder the next day. The other recruits felt sorry for him at first. Jake Morrison, a big guy from Texas, tried to help Marcus with his workouts. Sarah Chen, one of the few women in their unit, shared her protein bars with him to help him gain weight. But Marcus was always polite and grateful without being overly friendly. He seemed to live in his own quiet world. Everything changed during weapons training. The first time Marcus held an M4 rifle, something shifted in his posture. His hands stopped shaking. His breathing became steady. When the instructor demonstrated how to load and aim the weapon, Marcus absorbed every detail like a sponge soaking up water. On the shooting range, while other recruits struggled to hit targets at 100 meters, Marcus was putting bullets through the center ring at 300 meters. His shots were so accurate that the range instructors had to check his targets multiple times. They thought there might be some mistake. Nobody shot that well on their first try. Drill Sergeant Williams pulled Marcus aside after the first shooting. "Carsey, where did you learn to shoot like that, Thompson?" Marcus adjusted his glasses and spoke in his usual quiet voice. "My grandfather taught me, Sergeant. We used to hunt deer and rabbits back home in the mountains." "Just hunting?" Williams asked, looking at the perfect score sheet in his hands. "Yes, Sergeant. Grandpa always said ammunition was expensive, so every shot had to count. He taught me to breathe right and squeeze the trigger slow and steady." Williams nodded slowly. He had been training soldiers for 15 years, and he had never seen a recruit shoot like this. "What else did your grandfather teach you?" Marcus thought for a moment. "He said shooting was just math, Sergeant. You calculate the distance, wind, speed, and bullet drop. If you do the math right and stay calm, you will hit what you aim at." Word about Marcus's shooting skills spread quickly through the training base. Other instructors came to watch him during range time. He never missed his target. Not once. But Marcus acted like it was nothing special. When other recruits asked him for shooting tips, he would quietly explain breathing techniques and trigger control. He never showed off or bragged about his abilities. During combat simulations, Marcus revealed another surprising talent. While other recruits panicked when paint bullets started flying and smoke grenades went off, Marcus became eerily calm. His voice stayed steady when he called out enemy positions. His movements were careful and precise. He seemed to see the entire battlefield like a chess game, always thinking 3 moves ahead. In one training exercise, Marcus's squad was supposed to capture a hill defended by instructors playing enemy soldiers. The other squads had failed the same mission all week. Marcus studied the terrain for 10 minutes, then quietly suggested a plan to his squad leader. "We go around the left side where those trees provide cover," he said, pointing at his hand-drawn map. "2 people create a distraction on the right. The rest of us move up through the trees. There is a blind spot behind that big rock where we can get close without being seen." The squad leader, Corporal Davis, was skeptical. "You think you know better than the guys who have been doing this for years?" "No, Corporal," Marcus replied politely. "I just noticed something they might have missed." Davis decided to try Marcus's plan. It worked perfectly. They captured the hill without losing a single squad member. The instructors were impressed, but Marcus just shrugged when they asked him how he figured it out. "I read a lot of books about military tactics," he explained. "My town library had a whole section on warfare and strategy. I have been reading them since I was 12 years old. That evening in the barracks, Jake Morrison sat on Marcus's bunk. "Mouse, why didn't you tell us you were some kind of military genius?" Marcus looked up from the field manual he was reading. "I am not a genius, Jake. I just like to study and learn things. My grandfather always said knowledge was the best weapon a soldier could carry." "Your grandfather sounds like he was a smart man," Sarah Chen said from her bunk across the aisle. "He was," Marcus replied softly. "He fought in 3 different wars. He told me stories about battles and strategy every night when I was growing up. He said someday I might need to know these things." As the weeks passed, the other recruits began to see Marcus differently. He was still quiet and polite, but they realized there was much more to him than anyone had guessed. During classroom instruction about weapon systems, Marcus could recite specifications and technical details from memory. When they learned about enemy tactics, he could explain historical examples of similar strategies. The drill sergeant started asking Marcus questions they usually reserved for experienced soldiers. He always had thoughtful answers delivered in his soft, respectful voice. His test scores were perfect in every subject. His physical fitness was still below average, but his mental abilities were extraordinary. One evening, as graduation from basic training approached, Drill Sergeant Williams found Marcus cleaning his rifle in the armory after everyone else had gone to eat dinner. "Thompson, you know you have impressed a lot of people here," Williams said. Marcus continued working on his rifle. "I just try to do my best, Sergeant. Your unit is being deployed to Kepler 442b next month. That is not an easy assignment. The Vex Raiders are tough enemies." "Yes, Sergeant. I have been reading about them in the intelligence reports." Williams smiled. Most recruits would be nervous about their first deployment to a combat zone. Marcus was studying enemy intelligence reports like he was preparing for a test. "Are you worried about going to war, Thompson?" Marcus finished cleaning his rifle and looked up at his drill sergeant. For the first time in months, he spoke with complete confidence in his voice. "No, Sergeant, I feel like this is what I have been preparing for my whole life." 3 days later, Marcus Thompson boarded a transport ship bound for the war zone. His fellow soldiers still called him Mouse, but now it was said with respect rather than pity. They had no idea that the quiet kid from Tennessee would soon become the most decorated soldier in the colonial defense forces. The planet Kepler 442b looked nothing like Earth. The sky was a strange orange color, and 2 small moons hung in the air during daylight hours. Marcus Thompson pressed his face against the transport ship window, studying the rocky landscape below. After 3 months in space, he was finally going to see real combat. The human colony was bigger than Marcus had expected. Thousands of people lived in metal buildings scattered across a wide valley. But the war had left its mark everywhere. Burned vehicles sat along the roads. Blast craters dotted the landscape. Guard towers with heavy weapons watched the horizon, constantly. Marcus's squad was assigned to Bravo Company under Sergeant Rivera, a tough woman from California who had been fighting the Vex for 2 years. She looked at the new recruits with tired eyes during their first briefing. "The Vex are not like anything you trained for back on Earth," she told them. "They are reptile-like creatures about 7 feet tall with thick scales that can stop small bullets. They are fast, smart, and they do not take prisoners. Their plasma weapons can cut through our body armor like paper." Marcus listened carefully, storing every detail in his memory. The other new soldiers looked nervous, but he felt strangely calm. This was what he had been preparing for his entire life. "Your first mission is simple," Sergeant Rivera continued. "We are escorting a medical supply convoy through Mountain Pass 7. Intelligence says the route is mostly safe, but stay alert. The Vex like to set ambushes in rocky areas." The convoy consisted of 6 trucks loaded with medicine and surgical equipment desperately needed at Forward Base Charlie. Marcus rode in the second vehicle with 5 other soldiers. Jake Morrison sat across from him, nervously checking his rifle for the 10th time. "You nervous, Mouse?" Jake asked. Marcus shook his head. "My grandfather always said being nervous was normal before a fight. The trick is to use that energy to stay sharp instead of letting it make you panic." The mountain pass was beautiful in a deadly way. Red rocks rose high on both sides of the narrow road. The convoy moved slowly, drivers carefully navigating around. Boulders and rough patches, everything seemed peaceful. Then the world exploded. Bright green plasma bolts erupted from the cliffs above them. The lead truck burst into flames as its fuel tank was hit. The driver screamed as his clothes caught fire. 2 more plasma shots struck the vehicle behind Marcus, killing the driver instantly and sending the truck rolling off the road. "Ambush! Take cover!" Sergeant Rivera screamed over the radio. The surviving soldiers jumped from their vehicles and ran for whatever protection they could find. Most huddled behind the trucks, firing blindly up at the cliffs. The sound of weapons was deafening. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, leaving glowing trails. Marcus felt something strange happen to him. As chaos erupted around him, time seemed to slow down. His heart rate dropped instead of speeding up. His hands became perfectly steady. All the noise and confusion faded into the background as his mind focused like a laser beam. While his squad mates shouted and cursed, Marcus calmly studied the cliff face above them. He could see muzzle flashes from 3 different positions. The Vex snipers had chosen their spots well, but they had made one mistake. They were firing from fixed positions. Instead of moving after each shot, Marcus raised his rifle and calculated distance, wind speed, and angle in seconds. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. "Breathe slow, squeeze gentle, follow through." His first shot rang out clear and precise. 400 meters away, a Vex sniper tumbled from his hiding place among the rocks. Before anyone else had even spotted the enemy positions, Marcus had moved his aim to the second target. Another careful shot, another dead enemy. The third Vex sniper tried to change positions, but Marcus was already tracking him. The alien made it 3 steps before Marcus's bullet found its mark. "Holy shit, Thompson," Jake Morrison yelled. "How? Did you see them?" Marcus did not answer. He was already scanning for new threats. His instincts told him the ambush was not over. He was right. A group of 8 Vex warriors came charging down a narrow trail on the left side of the pass. They moved fast on their powerful legs, plasma rifles blazing. Most of the human soldiers were still trying to figure out where the enemy was coming from. Marcus stood up in the open, completely exposed to enemy fire. Plasma bolts hissed past his head, so close he could feel the heat. But he did not flinch. He had become something beyond human in that moment. A perfect killing machine guided by instinct and training. His rifle spoke again and again. Each shot was placed with surgical precision. The charging Vex fell one by one, their advance turning into a retreat and then into a rout. In 90 seconds, Marcus had eliminated all 8 enemies and saved the entire convoy. The sudden silence was almost as shocking as the violence had been. Smoke drifted across the battlefield. The smell of burned metal and alien blood filled the air. The surviving soldiers stared at Marcus in amazement. "Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that?" Sergeant Rivera demanded. Marcus was about to answer when pain exploded through his left shoulder and chest. A dying Vex warrior had managed to trigger a plasma grenade before bleeding out. Shrapnel from the explosion tore through Marcus's body, armor, and into his flesh. He fell to his knees, blood soaking through his uniform. But even wounded, his voice remained calm and steady. "My grandfather always said shooting was just math, Sergeant. The rest is staying calm enough to do the math, right?" The medics worked frantically to stop his bleeding. Plasma burns covered his shoulder and chest. Metal fragments had to be surgically removed from near his heart. As they loaded him into the medical evacuation helicopter, Marcus looked back at the battlefield. 11 dead Vex warriors lay scattered among the rocks. The convoy had been saved. His fellow soldiers were alive. Despite his wounds, Marcus felt satisfied with the day's work. 2 weeks later, as he recovered in the field hospital, a general he had never met visited his bedside. The man pinned a Purple Heart medal to Marcus's hospital gown. "Son, what you did out there saved a lot of lives," the general said. "Command wants to know if you are interested in sniper training." Marcus thought about his grandfather, who had taught him that every soldier had a duty to protect his brothers in arms. "Yes, sir. I would like that very much." Word of the convoy. Battle spread quickly through the colonial forces. The quiet kid from Tennessee had killed 11 enemy soldiers in his first real combat. But Marcus acted like it was just another day at work. The other soldiers in his unit no longer called him Mouse. They started calling him Ghost, because of how he seemed to appear and disappear on the battlefield like a spirit of death. But Marcus Thompson remained the same polite, soft-spoken young man he had always been. He just happened to be very good at war. 3 months after the convoy battle, Marcus Thompson had become a different kind of soldier. The colonial forces had given him sniper training and a special rifle designed for long-range shooting. His reputation spread through every base on Kepler 442b. There was a quiet kid who could make impossible shots and never seemed afraid of enemy fire, but Marcus remained unchanged in many ways. He still ate alone in the mess hall, reading tactical manuals while other soldiers played cards or watched movies. He still spoke softly and said, "Please" and "thank you" to everyone. The only difference was that now, when he walked through the base, conversation stopped and soldiers pointed at him with respect. The mission that would make him a true legend began with bad news. 12 human scientists working at Research Station Alpha had been captured by Vex forces. The aliens were holding them in a concrete compound surrounded by 200 meters of flat, open ground. There was no cover anywhere. Any rescue attempt would be suicide. Marcus sat in the briefing room with the Special Forces team assigned to Operation Bright Star. Major Kelly, the mission commander, pointed at aerial photos of the compound. "Intelligence suggests there are at least 40 Vex warriors inside the facility," she explained. "The hostages are being held in the central building. Our job is to get them out alive." The plan was simple, but dangerous. Marcus would set up on a hill 800 meters away to provide sniper support. The Special Forces team would attack at dawn when Vex guards would be looking into the rising sun. It was their best chance, but everyone knew the odds were terrible. Marcus studied the photos carefully. The compound had been built by humans before the war, so he knew the layout. His grandfather had taught him that knowing the battlefield was just as important as knowing how to shoot. "What if they start killing hostages when they see us coming?" asked Captain Rodriguez, the team leader. "Then we abort and try something else," Major Kelly replied. Marcus raised his hand politely. "Ma'am, what if we do not wait for dawn?" Everyone turned to look at him. Special Forces soldiers did not usually take tactical advice from 20-year-old corporals, even famous ones. "What do you have in mind, Thompson?" Major Kelly asked. Marcus pointed at the aerial photos. "The Vex have good night vision, but they rely on heat sensors in darkness. If someone could get close enough during the night, moving slowly and staying low, they might reach the compound without being detected. That is still 200 meters of open ground," Captain Rodriguez said. "And then what? One person cannot fight 40 enemies." "Maybe not fight them all," Marcus replied quietly. "But maybe confuse them long enough for the hostages to escape, Major." Kelly frowned. "You are talking about a suicide mission, Corporal." Marcus thought about the 12 scientists, people who had come to this dangerous planet to help build a better future for humanity. They had families back on Earth, children who were waiting for their parents to come home. "Ma'am, those people do not deserve to die because we are afraid to take risks." The argument continued for an hour, but Marcus had already made up his mind. When the meeting ended, he gathered his equipment and headed for the compound alone. He left a note for Major Kelly explaining that he could not wait while innocent people were being executed. The night was cold and dark. Marcus crawled across that deadly open ground for 4 hours, moving so slowly that he covered only 50 meters per hour. Every few minutes he stopped completely and waited, listening for any sound that might indicate he had been spotted. His body ached from staying in uncomfortable positions, but he forced himself to be patient. When he finally reached the outer wall of the compound, Marcus could hear voices inside. The Vex were arguing about something in their harsh, clicking language. Through a window, he saw 2 guards watching the hostages in what used to be the facility's cafeteria. Marcus made a decision that went against every rule of military engagement. Instead of waiting for backup, he decided to act immediately. He had noticed something the aerial photos had not shown. There was a ventilation shaft that led directly into the building where the hostages were being held. Getting inside was the easy part. Moving through the compound without alerting every Vex warrior was much harder. Marcus used everything his grandfather had taught him about hunting. He became a shadow, moving only when the guards were looking away, staying perfectly still when they turned in his direction. The first Vex guard died without making a sound. Marcus came up behind him and used a combat knife just like he had been trained. The second guard turned around just in time to see Marcus raising his rifle. One quiet shot ended the threat, but killing guards was not enough. Marcus needed to create chaos to give the hostages a chance to escape. He used the dead guards' plasma grenades to destroy the compound's power generator. Emergency lights flickered on, casting strange shadows everywhere. In the darkness and confusion that followed, Marcus moved through the facility like a ghost. He had memorized the layout from the photos, so he knew exactly where to go. Every Vex warrior he encountered died quickly and quietly. His rifle work was perfect. Not a single shot missed its target. When he reached the room where the hostages were being held, Dr. Sarah Chen looked at him like he was an angel sent from heaven. "Are you here to rescue us?" she whispered. "Yes, ma'am, we need to move right now." Leading 12 terrified civilians through a building full of enemy soldiers should have been impossible. But Marcus had created so much confusion that the Vex did not know where the attack was coming from. They were shooting at shadows while he guided the scientists toward the exit. The escape almost worked perfectly. They made it to the outer wall before a Vex patrol spotted them. Marcus pushed the hostages toward the open ground and told them to run for the human lines. Then he turned to face the enemy alone. What happened next became the stuff of military legend. Security cameras later showed Marcus holding off over 30 Vex warriors by himself. When his rifle ammunition ran out, he picked up enemy plasma weapons. When those failed, he used grenades and even fought hand-to-hand combat. By the time the Special Forces team reached the compound, all 12 hostages were safe, and Marcus had eliminated 37 enemy combatants. But the cost was severe. Plasma burns covered his back and legs. Shrapnel wounds had torn through his right arm. As medical teams worked to save his life, Dr. Chen grabbed his uninjured hand. "Soldier, you saved us all. What is your name?" "Corporal Thompson, ma'am," Marcus whispered. "Just doing my job." His second Purple Heart came with a promotion to sergeant and a medal for exceptional valor. But Marcus Thompson remained the same. Humble, soft-spoken young man he had always been. He just happened to be very good at impossible missions. Sergeant Marcus Thompson's reputation had spread beyond his unit and beyond his planet. Colonial Command now requested him personally for their most dangerous missions. Other soldiers felt honored to serve alongside the quiet hero from Tennessee. Young recruits asked to be assigned to his squad, hoping to learn from him. But Marcus remained the same humble person he had always been. The mission that earned him his third Purple Heart was supposed to be easy duty. While most of the colonial forces participated in a major offensive against the main Vex stronghold, Marcus was assigned to guard forward operating base Whiskey with a skeleton crew of 30 soldiers. The base contained important communication, equipment and medical supplies that needed protection while the real war happened elsewhere. Marcus did not mind the quiet assignment. After 6 months of constant combat, he welcomed the chance to rest and recover from his previous wounds. His right arm still ached from the shrapnel, and his back burned where the plasma weapons had hit him. But he never complained about the pain. The base sat on top of a small hill surrounded by desert. It was not a glamorous location, but it offered good visibility in all directions. Marcus spent his first day walking the perimeter, studying the defensive positions and thinking about how to improve them. "Sergeant Thompson, you really think the Vex will attack us here?" asked Private Williams, a young soldier fresh from Earth. Marcus adjusted the scope on his rifle. "My grandfather always said it was better to prepare for trouble and not need it than to need it and not be prepared. But intelligence says the main Vex force is attacking our guys 200 miles away." "Intelligence has been wrong before," Marcus replied quietly. He was right to be cautious. Intelligence was wrong again, but this time the mistake was bigger than anyone imagined. While the colonial forces attacked what they thought was the primary Vex base, the real enemy stronghold launched a massive counterattack against the lightly defended outposts. The attack came just before dawn, when the guards were tired, and the darkness provided cover. Marcus was checking the communication equipment when the first plasma bolts lit up the sky. Through his binoculars, he counted over 500 Vex warriors approaching from 3 different directions. They had armored vehicles and flying drones to support their attack. "All units, this is Sergeant Thompson," he said calmly into his radio. "We have multiple enemy forces approaching the base. Prepare for immediate combat." The battle should have lasted 10 minutes. 30 human soldiers against 500 Vex. Warriors with heavy weapons was not even close to a fair fight. But nobody told Marcus Thompson that the fight was supposed to be hopeless. As enemy forces overran the outer fence, Marcus took command of the defense from the communications bunker. His years of studying military tactics suddenly became the most important knowledge he possessed. He turned 30 frightened soldiers into a real fighting force. "Johnson, take your squad to the north wall. Do not try to stop them, just slow them down and fall back when they get close. Martinez, set up your machine gun on the supply building roof. You will have a good field of fire from there. Williams, you and Chen start moving ammunition to the secondary positions." Marcus assigned fields of fire so that every soldier knew exactly what area to defend. He organized ammunition distribution to make sure nobody ran out of bullets at the wrong time. When Vex artillery started falling on the base, he called in the few available airstrikes with perfect accuracy. But the most incredible moment came when the Vex breached the main gate. Most commanders would have ordered their troops to fall back to the inner defenses. Marcus did the opposite. He led a counterattack that drove the enemy forces back through the gate and bought his soldiers precious time to regroup. "Follow me," he shouted, charging into the enemy with his rifle blazing. The other soldiers, inspired by his courage, followed him into what should have been certain death. For 6 hours, the battle raged around forward operating base Whiskey. Every time the Vex thought they had broken through the defenses, Marcus found a way to stop them. He seemed to be everywhere at once, appearing wherever the fighting was heaviest, always arriving just in time to prevent a breakthrough. When ammunition ran low, he organized night raids to capture enemy weapons and supplies. When the radio equipment was damaged, he sent messages by having soldiers run between positions. When the medical station was hit by artillery, he moved the wounded to a safer location and continued treating them while directing the battle. The second day was even worse. The Vex brought up heavy plasma cannons designed to level buildings. The massive weapons began systematically destroying every structure in the base. Marcus knew they would all be dead within hours, unless something was done about those cannons. He studied the enemy positions through his scope. The artillery was positioned 400 meters away, protected by at least 50 Vex warriors. Getting close enough to destroy the cannons would be suicide. But 30 soldiers and hundreds of civilians in nearby settlements would die if those weapons were not stopped. Marcus made the kind of decision that separated heroes from ordinary soldiers. He grabbed a stolen Vex anti-tank weapon he had never used before and began crawling toward the enemy artillery positions. It took him 2 hours to cover 300 meters, moving so carefully that the enemy guards never spotted him. The anti-tank weapon was heavier and more complicated than human weapons, but Marcus figured out how to use it by watching Vex soldiers during previous battles. His first shot destroyed the largest plasma cannon. His second shot eliminated another artillery piece and the ammunition stored next to it. The explosion that covered his retreat also nearly killed him. Shrapnel from the destroyed ammunition tore through his legs and lower back, leaving him barely able to walk, but he continued crawling toward the base, stopping every few minutes to shoot at Vex soldiers who tried to follow him. When Marcus finally made it back to the communications bunker, he was bleeding heavily and could not feel his legs. But his voice remained calm and steady as he continued directing the defense from a stretcher. "Martinez, move your machine gun to the east wall. They will try to attack from that direction now that their artillery is gone. Johnson, take half your squad and reinforce the main gate. Williams, check our ammunition supplies and redistribute as needed." The battle continued for another 12 hours. Marcus, barely conscious from blood loss and pain, had to be physically restrained from trying to continue fighting. But his tactical planning had been perfect. When relief forces finally arrived, They found forward operating base whiskey still in human hands. Of the original 30 defenders, only 12 were still alive. But they had eliminated over 200 enemy combatants and held their position against impossible odds. The communication equipment was still working, the medical supplies were intact, and nearby civilian settlements had been saved from certain destruction. Marcus's third Purple Heart came with another promotion to Staff Sergeant and a recommendation for the Colonial Medal of Honor. The ceremony was held in the base hospital because he was still too injured to stand. Staff Sergeant Thompson, your actions saved not only this base but thousands of civilian lives, the general said as he pinned the medal to Marcus's hospital gown. Is there anything we can do for you? Marcus thought for a moment. Sir, I would like to make sure the families of the soldiers we lost get their benefits quickly, and maybe we could improve the defenses at the other outposts so this does not happen again. Even as the most decorated soldier in the Colonial Defense Forces, Marcus Thompson was still thinking about other people instead of himself. The quiet kid from Tennessee had become a living legend, but he remained focused on protecting those who could not protect themselves. Staff Sergeant Marcus Thompson returned to duty against all medical advice. The doctors wanted him to accept a discharge and go home to Earth. The wounds from 3 separate battles had left permanent damage to his shoulder, back, and legs. He walked with a slight limp now, and his right arm could not lift heavy objects, but his shooting eye remained perfect, and his tactical mind was sharper than ever. Marcus, you have done enough, Major Kelly told him during his fitness evaluation. Nobody would think less of you for going home. Marcus adjusted his glasses, the same thick frames he had worn since basic training 4 years earlier. Ma'am, the war is not over yet. My place is here with my unit. The war with the Vex was entering its final phase. Colonial forces had pushed the aliens back to their last stronghold, a massive fortress built into the side of an extinct volcano. The structure was enormous, carved directly from solid rock and protected by energy shields that could stop orbital bombardment. Taking it would require the largest ground assault in human colonial history. Thousands of soldiers from dozens of worlds were gathering for the final battle. The assault would involve coordinated attacks from multiple directions, supported by every available aircraft and artillery piece. It would be the most dangerous military operation ever attempted by human forces. Marcus was assigned to a support role with the command unit. His injuries made him too valuable to risk in direct combat, but his tactical knowledge was needed for planning the assault. He spent weeks studying satellite photos of the fortress, looking for weaknesses that others might miss. The main attack will go through the valley approach, General Harrison explained during the final briefing. We will have air support and heavy artillery. The Vex cannot possibly defend against a coordinated assault of this size. Marcus raised his hand politely. Sir, what about the energy shields protecting the fortress? Our engineers believe concentrated bombardment will overload them eventually. And if the shields hold? General Harrison frowned. He had been asking himself the same question for weeks. Then we will have to find another way, Sergeant. Marcus studied the fortress diagrams one more time. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. Sometimes the hardest battles require the simplest solutions. There was something about the fortress design that bothered him, but he could not figure out what it was. The assault began at dawn with the largest artillery barrage in colonial history. Hundreds of guns fired simultaneously, sending shells screaming toward the fortress. The energy shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the impacts, but they held. After 2 hours of continuous bombardment, the shields were still at full strength. Then, the ground assault began. Thousands of soldiers advanced across the valley floor while aircraft provided close support. Marcus watched through binoculars from the command post, his stomach tight with worry. The attack was not going according to plan. The Vex had built automated defense systems throughout the valley. Hidden weapons popped up from concealed positions, cutting down advancing soldiers with withering fire. The aircraft were shot down by surface-to-air missiles. Within an hour, the assault had stalled with massive casualties. We need to pull back and regroup, Colonel Davis advised. General Harrison shook his head. We cannot retreat now. Too many lives have been lost already. Marcus continued studying the fortress through his binoculars, That nagging feeling in his mind was getting stronger. There was something about the shield generator that seemed familiar. Then he remembered reading about similar technology in an old technical manual. "Sir, I think I know how to bring down the shields," he said quietly. Everyone in the command post turned to look at him. "What do you have in mind, Sergeant?" General Harrison asked. Marcus pointed at the fortress diagram. "The shield generator is inside the fortress, probably in the central power core. If someone could get inside and plant explosives directly on the generator, the shields would fail. Getting inside means crossing 2 kilometers of open ground under heavy fire, then climbing 500 meters of sheer rock face. That is impossible." Marcus thought about all the soldiers dying in the valley below. He thought about the families back on Earth waiting for news. He thought about his grandfather, who had taught him that sometimes good men had to do impossible things. "Not impossible, sir. Just very difficult." The argument that followed was brief, but intense. Marcus volunteered to attempt the mission alone. Everyone else said it was suicide. In the end, General Harrison made the decision that would complete Marcus Thompson's transformation from quiet recruit to immortal legend. "Go," the general said simply. Marcus gathered his equipment and headed toward the fortress alone. What followed was the most extraordinary display of combat skill in military history. He moved across that killing field like death itself, using every piece of cover, every shadow, every lesson learned in 4 years of warfare. His route was planned so perfectly that he seemed to know where every enemy shot would be fired before the triggers were pulled. He crawled through minefields, slipped past automated weapons, and avoided Vex patrols with almost supernatural skill. It took him 6 hours to cross 2 kilometers, but he reached the base of the cliff without being detected. The climb up the rock face was even more incredible. Plasma bolts exploded around him as Vex defenders spotted his movement. Pieces of rock rained down from impacts above. But Marcus ascended that wall with methodical precision, sometimes hanging by one hand, while firing at enemy positions with the other. Inside the fortress, he fought his way through corridors filled with the Vex's best warriors. His ammunition ran out twice, forcing him to use captured weapons and improvised explosives. Security cameras later showed him moving through the complex like a ghost, appearing where enemies least expected him, striking with lethal precision, then vanishing before they could react. When he finally reached the shield generator deep in the heart of the fortress, Marcus was bleeding from dozens of wounds. His uniform was torn and scorched. He could barely stand. But his hands were steady as he placed the charges that would end the war. The shield generator was larger than he had expected, a massive crystal structure that hummed with energy. Marcus used all his remaining explosives, setting them for maximum damage. As he prepared to leave, he realized something terrible. The explosion would bring down the entire mountain. He would never escape in time. Marcus thought about his grandfather, who had taught him that a soldier's highest duty was protecting others. He thought about the thousands of human soldiers in the valley below, and the millions of colonists who would live in peace if the war ended today. The choice was easy. He activated the charges and sat down next to the generator. In his final moments, Marcus Thompson was not afraid. He was proud. The quiet kid from Tennessee had found his purpose in life, and he had fulfilled it completely. The explosion that destroyed the shield generator also brought down half the mountain. The fortress fell within hours as colonial forces poured through the breached defenses. The war was over. Humanity had won. They found Marcus 3 days later, somehow still alive in a pocket of air beneath tons of rubble. His body was broken, in ways that should have killed him, but his spirit remained unbroken. When the rescue teams pulled him from the wreckage, his first words were a question. "Are our people safe?" When they told him yes, that the war was over and the colonies were secure, he simply nodded and closed his eyes. Marcus's 4th and 5th Purple Hearts were presented to him in the hospital, along with the Colonial Medal of Honor and a battlefield promotion to lieutenant. But Lieutenant Marcus Thompson did not care about medals or promotions. He had done what needed to be done. Years later, when new recruits asked about the famous Lieutenant Thompson, their instructors would tell them about the soldier who proved that heroes are not born from courage or strength. They are made from an unshakable commitment to do what is right, no matter the cost. The quiet kid from Tennessee had become humanity's greatest warrior not because he wanted glory, but because he understood that freedom always comes with a price. And he had been willing to pay that price so others would not have to. Marcus Thompson had earned his place in history one Purple Heart at a time, but his real legacy was simpler than any medal or monument. He had shown that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they fought for something bigger than themselves. The legend was complete, but the man remained unchanged. Humble, dedicated, and forever committed to protecting those who could not protect themselves.